awkward with someone in the room. The camera moved.
Are you serious? Was it me sitting down?
Yes. And we are having technical difficulties that you podcast people don't care about. Yo, Spartans for Christ, what is up? Okay, before we actually get into the video, I want to say that this horrible camera angle is because I don't currently have my camera stand thingy, so I will be getting that for next video. But this time, my camera is literally strapped to my ring light, so yeah, enjoy. I hope you are all doing well and amazing and great. It is so nice to be back. As you can see, it's kind of a different feel. If you're subscribed to the SIB, then you already know that I started a podcast, which I started before, but this time I am going to stick through it. If not, just to prove my best friend wrong, that I can be consistent. Maybe not with my timing, but I will be consistent with my series. So, if you are on the SIB, then you know that I started this series on the SIB. But I decided that the SIB is more for fun stuff, and this is actually kind of a serious podcast. So I will actually be moving it here. I will be having a playlist. Click up here. If you haven't seen the first podcast, click up here to go check it out, and it will bring you straight to the playlist. But today it is week 2 of YUBG. If you do not know what YUBG is, it is YUBG. It's Youth Used by God. So we are in week 2 of Youth Used by God for you podcast listeners. It is so great to have you here. Just a quick wrap up. We are going through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, looking at all the youth used by God, and we are going to have a theme with each and every one of them. And today is week 2, and we will be talking about Isaac, which I almost put Noah in there. And I was kind of thinking that there might be controversy that Noah is the next man used by God, but he wasn't used by God as a youth. I'm pretty sure we can all agree on that. So I went to, and neither was Abraham. I made sure of that. I triple checked. So we are going to Isaac. So as you know, last week, our whole theme was your legacy. What do you want your legacy to be? And we talked about Cain and Abel. Well, today we're going to be talking about Isaac, and we're going to be talking about the unknown. And the unknown is basically, we all have unknowns in our lives. We have the unknown moments where we think we know what God is doing, and then something happens and suddenly we don't. And we're going to talk about those moments right now. If you do not know the story of Abraham and Isaac, here's a quick little recap. Abraham was married to Sarai, or Abram was married to Sarai. God called him out from his family to go to another land. God guided him there, didn't tell him really where it was, but promised his son that would become a great nation. It took many years, but when Abraham was beyond the years of having children, he had Isaac, the promised child, and his name means laughter. And we have an interruption. YouTube people, if the camera just shifted, I blame Katrina. Okay, anyway, back to the story of Abraham and Isaac. Isaac was the promised child, the child of promise, and his name means laughter because his mother said that he brought her laughter. Now that we have wrapped up the story of Abraham and Isaac, we're going to be looking at Genesis 22. Verses 1 to 19. That is long. Wonderful. Okay. So, let's get to it. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Come here with the donkey, while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood from the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife, as the two of them went on together. Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two went on their way together. When they reached the place God told them about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you will fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up and saw in the thicket, he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day, on the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. That is the name to this day. I messed that up. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through their offspring all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off to Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. So this is kind of a wild story when you really break it down. God comes to Abraham, and right off the bat, God's like, "Yo, you know that kid like you wanted your whole life? Yeah, that kid. Well, he's a little older now, okay? Yeah, I know you waited so long," and he was like, "I promised you to him, but like I want you to sacrifice him to me. Basically, I want you to give him back to me. He's mine. I gave him to you. Now I want you to sacrifice him as a burnt offering on a mountain." So, this is kind of like an extreme situation. I'm pretty sure none of your parents are like, "Yo, son, you're getting burned today." So, this is an extreme situation right off the bat. But Abraham decides to trust God and obey him. But today we are not going to focus on Abraham. We are going to focus on Isaac. And we're going to kind of look from his perspective. So think about it. This guy, I don't know how old he is. Maybe he's a teenager. I'm hoping he's a teenager. He's a youth. We're counting him as a youth. His dad tells him, "Okay, we're going to go do the sacrifice on this mountain. Like normal. We're just going to go worship God." And, they get there, and halfway up the mountain, Isaac's like, "Yo, Dad didn't bring a ram." So, he asks his dad, "Yo, where's the ram?" And he's like, "Oh, no, God will provide. It's fine." And then suddenly this kid is finding himself on top of the altar. And that right there, even though it's extreme, that is the unknown. Why? Because in that situation, that was Isaac's end. And today I just want to talk about how the situation you are in might seem like the end, but maybe God is just taking you to a new level, or maybe even in Isaac's case, what you think is your end, God is creating new beginnings. Why? Because if you look at the result of this situation, God says, "Look, you proved to me that you trust me. You proved to me that you would not even hold your only son that you waited your entire life to get. So because of this, I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and all the nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me." So it's just this, I think it's amazing, and I feel like a lot of times in our lives, we can get into situations where we think we know what God is doing. Isaac going up to that mountain, he thought he knew what he and his dad were gonna go do. But then he hit a point in which he didn't get it. Something was off. He was expecting to sacrifice a ram, but suddenly that's not what was happening because a part of it was missing. Sometimes in our lives, we think God is doing one thing, but then when we start following that path, we realize, wait, something's missing here. It's not lining up. It's not working out the way it's supposed to be. And sometimes it feels like we find ourselves at that altar, laying there. It feels like we're at our end and there's no way out, and it's kind of like, I don't know what to do. But in reality, I want to encourage you that in those moments, maybe it's not your end and maybe it's a new beginning. Maybe God is just trying to take you to a brand new level. A couple nights ago, I went to my brother's girlfriend's house, and she had I Am Not Ashamed, the movie there. And I have not watched it yet. I've wanted to watch it for so long. But it's about Rachel Scott, if you didn't know, and the school shooting. It's a great movie. You should watch it. I've heard it's a great movie. I don't actually know. But the synopsis on the back of the DVD had this quote. And it kind of just caught my eye because of the topic today. And it says, Rachel Scott's, her hopes and dreams seemed to end, but God was just getting started. And so obviously here, I'm bringing you that quote, but obviously, Rachel Scott's life ultimately ended in her meeting Jesus at the end moment. So the end moment might end, like your story might end up like Isaac's, that you come to the moment that you think is the end, but God then rescues you from it and then starts a new beginning in your life and with those around you. Or it might end like Rachel's, where she gets to go be with God, but she doesn't necessarily get to see the impact of her end, even though God did amazing things through that. So the real question isn't when is your end or anything like that. The real question is, are you willing to trust God with your beginnings and your endings? I feel like so much of the time we're willing to give God our beginnings. We're willing to say, God, where do you want me? Where do you want me to take the next steps? Open the doors, open the doors. But sometimes when he starts opening doors and closing the ones we thought he was going to open, that's when we go, no, 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 no. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When in reality, what God is calling us to do, he is calling us to trust him with the doors he opens and the doors he closes, even if the doors he opens don't really make sense. What doors is he opening in your life? What doors is he closing in your life? And are you willing to trust him? Are you willing to allow him to bring you to that point where he is all you have? Because that is when amazing things happen. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast / video, depending on what format you're on. If you didn't watch my last one or listen to my last podcast, go check it out. I have 2 on there, actually. The link will be down in the description below. Share this with a friend, and yeah, peace out.